Molly Watson believed that the best days of her life were still ahead of her. Like so many people, she carried simple dreams in her heart. A happy life, quiet moments with family, and years spent sharing love, laughter, and memories with the people she cared about most. She had plans for tomorrow, goals for the future, and a growing belief that the life she had hoped for over so many years was finally within reach. But sometimes, life changes in ways no one could ever imagine. Some dreams are protected with all of a person's heart, yet never get the chance to become reality. And Molly Watson's story begins with one of those unfinished dreams, a future she was ready to embrace, but would never have the opportunity to live. Before her name appeared in news reports across the United States, Molly Watson was simply a woman known for her kindness, her warmth, and her genuine heart. Molly Nicole Watson was born on the 15th of December 1982 in Moberly, Missouri. When her life was tragically cut short in 2018, she was just 35 years old. And living in the Huntsville area of Missouri, family was always at the center of Molly's life. Those closest to her remember a loving daughter, someone who cared deeply for her parents, her brother, and the people around her. But above all else, the role she treasured most was being a mother. Her son, Declan, was the center of her world. According to family members, many of the most important decisions she made in life were guided by a single goal: to give her son the best life possible, and every opportunity she could provide. Friends described Molly as friendly, creative, and the kind of person who could make others feel welcome almost instantly. It is that version of Molly, the caring mother, the devoted daughter, and the loyal friend, that the people who loved her continue to remember today. Molly Watson was never someone who chased fame or recognition. She wasn't focused on achievements designed to impress other people. What she wanted was something much simpler: to build a meaningful life, a life where she could give her love to the people who mattered most, and become the best version of herself. In her professional life, Molly was known as a compassionate and dedicated person. Before her death, she worked at BoDa Behavioral Health in Missouri. It wasn't the kind of job that brought public attention or prestige, but it was a job that allowed her to help people. Those who worked alongside Molly remembered someone who was always willing to listen, someone who genuinely cared about people facing difficult times. For her, the value of a day's work wasn't measured by titles or status. It was measured by the positive difference she could make in someone else's life. Outside of work, Molly was creative, thoughtful, and deeply emotional. She loved music. She enjoyed arts and crafts, and she found happiness in small personal projects that meant something to her. Friends and family often said that Molly found joy in life's simple moments. She didn't need luxury to feel happy. She didn't need attention or admiration. Being able to do what she loved and spend time with the people she loved, that was enough. As she entered her 30s, Molly began thinking more seriously about the future she wanted to create. She hoped for stability, strong and lasting relationships, and more time with her family. These weren't extraordinary dreams, but they were goals she had spent years working toward. The people who loved Molly often said she was never someone who lived only for herself. When she talked about the years ahead, she talked about family, the people she loved, and the plans she hoped to share with them. What made Molly happy wasn't public recognition, it wasn't status, and it wasn't achievement for its own sake. What made her happy was the feeling of belonging, of being loved, and sharing life with the people she treasured most. When Molly looked toward the future, she wasn't dreaming about extraordinary success. She simply hoped for more time with family, more meaningful relationships, and a life she could truly call happy. Perhaps that is why Molly's story resonates with so many people, because the dreams she carried weren't unusual. They were ordinary dreams, the kind of dreams almost anyone can recognize in their own life. And perhaps that is what makes the loss so heartbreaking. By April 2018, it seemed that Molly Watson was finally approaching the future she had been waiting for over many years. Much of her time was spent taking care of the final details before her wedding. Friends later recalled that Molly often talked about her upcoming plans. She was excited, hopeful, and looking forward to the big day that was drawing closer. To her, everything seemed to be unfolding exactly as she had hoped. On the 25th of April, 2018, Molly and James Addy visited the Randolph County office to obtain their marriage license. The wedding was scheduled to take place just 2 days later. People who saw Molly during that time remembered a woman filled with anticipation, busy with the last-minute preparations, and eager for the life she believed was about to begin. No one knew that these would also be the final days of her life. In some of the last known messages she sent, Molly still talked about the things she needed to finish, the plan she was making, and the future that seemed to be waiting just ahead. Her thoughts were focused on the days she believed were about to begin. These were the final known moments of a woman preparing to step into a new chapter of her life, a chapter she had spent years hoping for, a future she believed was finally within reach, and she would never have the chance to live. On the evening of the 27th of April, 2018, just 2 days before her scheduled wedding, Molly Watson's life came to a sudden and tragic end in a remote area of Monroe County, Missouri. News of what had happened quickly shocked her family, her friends, and the community where she lived. No one could understand how a woman who had been preparing for one of the happiest moments of her life would never have the chance to see that day arrive. In an instant, everything Molly had spent years building came to a halt. The plan she had worked so hard to create, the future she had imagined, the life she believed was finally within reach, all of it was suddenly taken away. The dreams left unfinished. The days she had been looking forward to, and the future she believed was waiting for her. None of it would ever become reality. For the people who loved Molly, the loss was not only the loss of a life, it was the loss of an entire future. A future that ended before it ever had the chance to begin. After Molly Watson was found on the evening of the 27th of April, 2018, law enforcement agencies in Missouri quickly launched an investigation to determine what had happened. As the investigation progressed, detectives gathered witness statements, reviewed communication records, examined personal information, and analyzed other evidence connected to the final days of Molly's life. As investigators began piecing the evidence together, their attention increasingly focused on James Addy, the man who had been scheduled to marry Molly just 2 days later. Addy was later arrested and charged in connection with Molly Watson's death. The case eventually went before a jury, where prosecutors presented the evidence they argued demonstrated his responsibility for the crime. In 2021, James Addy was convicted of first-degree murder and armed criminal action. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. For Molly's family, the verdict brought a measure of justice. But no verdict, no sentence, and no courtroom decision could ever bring Molly back to the people who loved her. Molly Watson's death left behind a void that no verdict could ever fill. For her parents, it was the loss of a daughter they had loved, supported, and watched grow throughout her life. A daughter they had always hoped would have a bright future ahead of her. For her brother and other family members, it was the loss of someone who brought warmth, laughter, and a sense of connection whenever the family gathered together. But perhaps the greatest loss was carried by her son, Declan. He lost the chance to grow up alongside his mother, to share life's important milestones with the person who loved him unconditionally. Friends, remember Molly not for what happened during the final days of her life. They remember her kindness, her compassion, and the way she was always willing to make time for others. That is the Molly Watson many people continue to remember today. A caring woman, a devoted mother, a beloved daughter and friend, someone whose life touched many others, and someone who will never be forgotten. Molly Watson never dreamed of fame or extraordinary success. What she wanted was much simpler: a peaceful life, to be loved, and to share the years ahead with the people who mattered most. It was a future she had spent years preparing for, years hoping for. and years believing would one day become reality. But Molly's story reminds us that the most valuable things in life are often not great achievements. They are the people beside us, and the moments we sometimes take for granted. Perhaps the most important thing to remember about Molly Watson is not the way her life ended, but the way she lived, the way she loved, and the beautiful dreams she carried in her heart. Dreams that will always remain a part of her story.